sonrisa. Soy las calles de Nueva York y Puerto Rico. Trato de tocar la vida de mi gente del mismo modo en que han tocado la mía. Yo vivo para, de alguna manera, dejar mi huella. Yo simplemente...
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Tuesday Night Topic. My name is Brian Rosario. I am the president of the IDSA, and I am pleased to introduce to you Joaquin Stevenson from Maine East and John Aldworth from Maine West. And they're going to be talking to us about equity as a foundation for student activities.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. So in the beginning, we're supposed to play some salsa from Mark Anthony, get everyone going. Had a little tech issues. We're going to adapt to this space. Brian, appreciate it. IDSA, yes. We just wanted to take a moment. So we want people to absorb this quote, this Yoruba quote, and the image. So just take about 30 seconds to absorb the image in this quote. And then ask yourself, what does this mean for you? So where will you sit? And how does that say where you stood in your youth? So as we center in this image, we're gonna toss it on to my amazing partner, John. Before that, I'm sorry, my name is Joaquin Stevenson, Associate Principal Student Experiences here at Maine East High School. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I identify as a Mexican-American brown person. John.
Right, thank you, Joaquin. My name is John Aldworth. I'm the Associate Principal for Student Experiences at Maine West. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I identify as a heterosexual cisgender white male. Thrilled that all of you are here tonight. I really appreciate that. I'm going to go through the agenda, just kind of set the table a little bit for everything that we'll be doing this evening. And again, we really appreciate that that you're here with us today. So first, obviously, we're gonna get some introductions. Greg, you can go and flip to that agenda slide. We're gonna go through and define a little bit, get some working definitions of equity, and we'll center our conversation today around race. I'm going to go through the protocol and the norms of our conversation today, talk about the compass, the 4 agreements, and the 6 conditions. Then we'll talk a little bit about one man's journey. That's going to be mine. Get into some groups and do some windows and mirrors in some breakout groups. Define some terms regarding inter and intra-racial discourse. And then again, we'll get into some breakout groups and have some conversations as well. We'll have some time for questions and dialogue at the end, and then closing circle to move us to the end of our presentation tonight. So we should be done around 9 o'clock or so. Really appreciate you guys. Really appreciate y'all being here. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Greg, we can go to the next slide. We would just love to first start by saying John and I are both cisgender heterosexual men. I'm a person of color. He identifies as a white person. So even in this presentation, I want to name that there are limitations to what we see and what we live in relation to the context of our conversation. So we just want to make sure that it's upfront that we are not experts, but we are experts in our own experience. And this is the time for us to share our collective knowledge, and that we hope that you can enjoy that for the next 50 minutes that we have together. So what is your why for equity, both personally and professionally? The reason why this question is important is that equity as a foundation of what you do to be authentic is first to start with the personal. There's a lot of mistakes that I've seen in my career of professional colleagues trying to start with doing equity and for it only to live in the professional. And that's exactly how it becomes inauthentic and disingenuous for students and colleagues alike. And trust me, people can tell. And so this is going to lead us to this video we're going to watch in the next slide to center our why. Thanks, Greg. Greg's our behind the scenes support. Love you, Greg.
How do I know? A lot of people, when they think of the phrase, how do I know, they always want to put the what behind it. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? The question that you really should ask is, how do I know why I'm here? Because when you know your why, your what becomes more clear and more impactful. If you know, like for instance, people know that I do comedy, but that's what I do. My why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. So I can do comedy, I can write books, I can be in a movie, because all of it is motivated by my why. In fact, I have a new web series out called Michael Jr. Break Time. We probably just did the 6th episode. It's on YouTube. So every single Wednesday at 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode on YouTube of Michael Jr. Break Time. What it is it's me. I travel around the country and I do stand-up comedy, in case you didn't know. And in the middle of my comedy set sometime, I'll stop and just talk to my audience. And we've been filming this, and it's, you know, it's pretty cool. So we're in Winston-Salem. I'm gonna show you a clip from Winston-Salem. And I'm just talking to this guy in the audience, and he tells me that he's a musical instructor at a school. So I was like, all right, you're a musical instructor, you know, can you sing? Let me hear you sing a song. So this is what happened at the last episode of Michael Jr.'s Break Time. Check it. So you're a musical director? Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing, you know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now, right now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Let's go. Now. Okay, here's what I want you to catch. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking towards or in your purpose.
I don't know about you guys. I always get chills when I see that video. It's just that so impassioned. As we move forward, I know there's a image that's going or that's been out a lot, kind of clarifying a little bit between equity and equality. And oftentimes people use those terms interchangeably. I think this image right here kind of shows the difference. So oftentimes people talk about equality, they want the same thing for everybody. And as you can see in that image right there, the same thing doesn't work. But when we talk equity, we really strive to give everybody what they need in order to be successful. And that will be different for every single person. So the bikes are a great example of that. Equality is not going to work for everybody, but equity will. In fact, I was in a meeting with Joaquin just the other day where he very clearly described this to some people that we were talking to about, you know, bringing students back into the building and the difference between equality and equity. So it's certainly still out there right now. So moving on to the next, I'm breaking one of my cardinal rules of PowerPoint. There's too many words here, so I'm not going to read them to you. But what I'd like you to do is read through this, read what equity work is about and what equity work is not about. And then in the chat, when you hit on something that really kind of jumps out at you, please just drop that in the chat. Drop something powerful that pops out at you from this slide. I see a lot of yes and a lot of yeah buts, as which doesn't surprise me with student activities people, right? We hear a lot of yeah buts. Shared humanity coming in, excellent. Yes, and a rule of improv. Good, Colleen. Yeah, and a rule of life and planning and administration and activities and equity and everything. Thank you. All right, so I think those are just some friendly guidelines as we kind of look at what equity work is hard and it doesn't end, right? So these are just some little bullets about what it is about compared to what it is not. All right, we can go ahead and move on. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Greg, go back for a second. I love, there was a few people referenced this piece, and Doug Williams also referenced it in the chat, which is equity work is about deep personal and professional reflection, which precedes action. And this is something that John is going to talk about later. And what I've seen in my career is that most institutions will rush into action first, then reflection, right? To keep the personal away from it. But this is the engagement of hearts and minds. And so that personal connection to ownership is key to this work. Thanks, John. Thanks, Greg. And as we move on to, before we get into the tools of how to have the conversation about race, we want to talk to you about the racial consciousness. And so oftentimes, I'll hear some colleagues say, "Oh yeah, I'm woke," and it's like, hold on one second, hold on. There was a great shirt I saw on Instagram recently where it says, "Oh my God, what does it say?" It's initiation of not stay woke, right? Instead of Coca-Cola, it says like "stay woke." I don't know if you all have seen that, but the stay is the key, right? Staying woke is key because we can all go back to sleep. And think about the Matrix movie of when Morpheus gives Neo like either the red pill or the blue pill, right? You take the red pill, you go back to sleep, or you take the blue pill and you really see the reality of what is. And so understanding your own racial consciousness is truly important. And so in this racial consciousness wheel by the Courageous Conversations protocol from Pacific Education Group, the consciousness in that part of the wheel is I know what I know, right? So you know what you know about racism. You know what you know about yourself. Then there's a semi-conscious. I don't know and I know, right? So you know what you do know, and you also know what you don't, right? You understand both of those. Here's where I need to fill in the gaps. Here's what I need to learn. And here's what I do know. Now, this is the place where racism lives, breathes, and really deconstructs the core of education systems. And I would say also our country is disconsciousness, right? I don't know, but I think I do. And you could probably name the individuals in the room that often spew knowledge. I don't know, but I think I do, right? From that piece. And this is where racism lives and breathes. So this is where we want to stay away from. And then there's the unconscious. And look at all that room right there. So this is the collective knowledge in the world. Like, I don't know what I don't know. And so this is where the space of non-judgment is in relation to everyone working on their racial consciousness, right? Because I would argue that we're all born in, raised in, and currently live in a racist society. Now, how much we're aware, conscious about that is where the wheel is. And so there may be a lot of things that I don't know what I don't know. And so that's part of our learning here today and the continuous journey that most of us will take, and we hope all of us will take for our lives. This is never ending. Thank you so much. As we transition to the next slide, we want to talk about the Courageous Conversations protocol. So first is the compass. Second is the 4 agreements. And lastly is the 6 conditions. We're not going to get into 6 conditions. That would take about 9 sessions of 1-hour sessions probably. So we're going to go to the next slide and start with the compass. So think of the compass as a social emotional monitoring tool, right? So if John and I are having a discourse about race, and me as a Mexican-American person who identifies as brown, John as a white person, I come into his class, I'm a student, and I tell him, I was just called a wetback by so-and-so, here's what I want to talk about, right? And John's telling me, well, do you think the person really meant it, right? So immediately, John is in thinking, right? And I'm in feeling, and we're at opposite ends of the compass. So we are never going to hear each other in that discourse about race, never. If John keeps on thinking intellectually, trying to intellectualize the conversation, and I'm still in my feelings about me receiving a racial impact as a student in his class, we're never going to hear each other, right? And so the purpose is for John as my teacher to model that, what it looks like to meet me in feeling, right? So go to the place where I'm at and try to pull me to the center so we can hear each other in that conversation. So believing, feeling, thinking, and acting, all situations of the conversation about race and how we see ourselves in the conversation. So if you find yourself in one location, which you never want to live in one area. So if you find yourself always in acting, I want to do, but there's no time for thinking, really believing in your moral compass, and no time for feeling, then that kind of goes back into action before reflection, right? So you never want to find yourself living in one area of the quadrant. You want to find yourself balanced between believing, thinking, acting, and feeling, so that you can really move this work forward in self and then in others. We're going to move on to, and John will take the 4 agreements.
Thanks, Joaquin. As he mentioned earlier, these are from Courageous Conversations about Race. And we're going to ask that everyone participate and really dive into these 4 agreements as we continue tonight and as everyone continues in their own personal journey dealing with racism. The first is to stay engaged. And you know what that means for you. So we're asking everybody, to the best of your ability, to stay engaged as much as you possibly can for the next 40 minutes or so while we continue through this. Just like, you know, we give people some freedom if they turn their cameras off, they need to, whatever the case may be, we're asking you to stay engaged, and what that looks like for you, only you will know. We are going to experience discomfort. There's no question there, and discomfort is necessary for growth in our understanding of social injustice and learning to be an anti-racist, okay? these conversations are not easy. That's probably why people avoid them, right? So there will be discomfort, and that's the only way that we can all grow. We will ask everyone to speak their own truth. And when you speak your truth, when you're in breakout rooms or having conversations, we ask that you use the I, me pronouns, so you're not speaking for anyone except yourself. And then expect and accept non-closure. I think everyone here would agree we're not going to solve racism by 9 p.m. And there may be times and moments where there's something you really want to say or really want it to, jump into a conversation. We just have to accept that we're not going to come to closure on a lot of our topics tonight. So expect that and accept that and realize that knowing that helps us to understand that this is continuous, lifelong work. So these 4 agreements count for tonight for sure, and then any conversations that you will have about race as we move forward.
My brother John, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Let's go back to that last slide, Greg. This is how we model what it is to work with one another in social justice. So, John, for the room, if you can name what is easiest for you, which one of these agreements is the easiest for you, and which one is the most difficult, and why?
The easiest for me, I think, is expecting and accepting non-closure. At times that's challenging, but I think knowing that I'm going to come back and continue these conversations again and again, that makes that one a little easier for me to swallow. The discomfort is the toughest for me because I've had, 47 years of comfort, right? So experiencing that discomfort is part of it. Always trying to make sure that I'm doing the right thing, saying the right thing, and worrying about going into that world of discomfort. It's a little tough. How about you, Joaquin?
Thanks, John. I appreciate that. So mine is staying engaged is the easiest for me. Just 100% glued in. Because there wasn't a time at my dinner table that there wasn't a conversation about race. So that's the easiest for me. The most difficult for me is to expect and accept non-closure. That's the most difficult part. In so many ways, it is based on what I see in the streets, specifically the unarmed killings of Black men, women, and trans people, and how it just pains my soul every day. And it's hard for me to accept that. Why isn't there more emotional reaction from all of us? But also the hope also is there as well, and expecting to accept non-closure, because I have never seen, when I'm on the streets during this time in the summer, I've never seen so much interracial solidarity towards the quest for social justice, and that gives me hope. Thanks, John. Appreciate that. A really good opportunity for us to model for the room. Hope that was helpful, y'all. So beliefs, behavior, results. Very important to understand the cycle of socialization if you want to understand the cycle of racism. And so what we read, what we see, what we hear, basically, as Robin DiAngelo puts it, the writer of White Fragility, how we live, love, laugh, and play is where we develop our beliefs. And what that looks like racially. Like some of us, I would say generally speaking, most white people in America can live, love, laugh, and play in racial segregation, die, and even be buried in racial segregation, and not have experienced the inclusiveness of people of color in their personal life as a loss. And this is something that Robin DiAngelo talks about specifically. And so think about your beliefs and think about where you live, love, laugh, and play. What does that look like racially? Not at work. I'm talking about where you live, right? Where you love, where you laugh, where you play. And so that really forms your beliefs, which drives your behaviors and how we walk into schools, how we serve students or disserve students. And then our beliefs drives our behaviors, which inform our results. And right, so we look at racial achievement disparities, we look at disparities related to over-identification of special education, disparities on discipline data, on academic achievement data, semester failures, grade distribution. access to, like what we're experiencing related to COVID, to internet, to transportation, to food, et cetera. The list goes on and on and on. And so it's really important to understand that our beliefs drive our behaviors, which inform our results. That really helps understand a little bit, at least in this segment, of understanding the cycle of socialization. And the only way of interrupting that is education. Now I get to go ahead and sit back, y'all. This is going to be a really powerful opportunity to listen to one man's journey.
Thanks, Joaquin. So I thought a lot about this as we were going, and we were going to try and keep some images going, but I feel this may come across a little better with just personalizing this as much as possible. So I share this kind of, it almost seems self-indulgent of me, but a little bit of a journey, my own personal journey, because I feel that there are others out there who have similar journeys, and I think staying engaged and sharing, my truth is the best way for me to continue to grow, and certainly to experience some discomfort as well. So, like a lot of people, my parents are they're really wonderful people, incredibly kind, generous. My mom lost both her parents when she was 15. My dad lost his father when he was 11. Poor South Side Irish. Went to Vietnam because he didn't have any money, didn't have a chance to go to college at the time. So came back, went on the GI Bill, et cetera, et cetera. So I talk about that because my white parents raised me in white suburbs, intentionally kept me isolated, and I didn't really realize that. This is a perfect example of you don't know what you don't know. So when I was at U of I was walking around the quad selling Save the Chief t-shirts to raise some college beer money, and I'm like, what is the big deal with the chief? Why is everyone so upset? I don't get it. So I was trying to sell those shirts, and my parents were supportive, and that was it was just where I was. As I said, I didn't know what I didn't know. As Maya Angelou wrote, she said, do the best you can until you know better, and then when you know better, do better. I've gone through, I think, some shame and embarrassment about not having any of this knowledge, but you realize after a while that shame and embarrassment don't really help you grow. So I had the tremendous experience to go through SEED and then Beyond Diversity. SEED with Joaquin as one of our facilitators, and then Corey Wallace, if you know her, another incredible facilitator, wonderful woman, who really opened my eyes. And there were several people who were having similar journeys as we were going. And I was learning about things that were never taught to me, never in the history books, that I never sought out. I just didn't know. So as I started learning these things, I'm like, wow, we got to do some stuff. And I was at Maine West High School, and as a lot of Maine West just got rid of their mascot not very long ago. We're a little behind the times over there, but we're catching up. So we had the opportunity to really demonstrate for all our students that this isn't right, and started having some conversations with students as well. And one thing, as an activity director, we want all of our students to be involved. And as I started looking around, I'm like, wow, you know what? These clubs and activities, especially leadership groups, do not reflect the diversity of our school. And I didn't really know how to help. So I did what I thought I should do. I invited some students of color to leadership groups. One particular student, her name was Kamani, fantastic fantastic kid. I kept inviting her. I'm like, hey, you got to come. You got to come. You know, I have this student activity leadership group. We need your voice. This would be great. So she walks in one day, she looks around, she looks uncomfortable. She sits down for about 20 minutes of our meeting. And then before it's over, she just gets up and leaves. And then I tried to find her. She avoided me for about a week. Finally get in touch with her. And I'm like, come on, what, you know, I really think you've got so much potential. What's happening? She goes, Mr. Aldworth, those kids aren't like me. And it just hit me like, no, they're not. But how do we make them? You know, how do we open up these experiences for so many of our students? And that's really kind of become my purpose, my why as to student activities. So I always joke, 5 years ago, I was hired to run assemblies, and I think my purpose has changed significantly. And the reason I'm sharing this, you know, the reason I share this story, and I have Joaquin and Corey and some other fantastic people to thank for that. Not because of the shame or embarrassment about not knowing things I think I should have known, but really because it's so people know that, you know, we're all in different places, and to expect someone to be somewhere they're not is not helpful on the journey, right? So everyone can grow, but they have to start where they're at, and then we help them grow in whatever way they can. And that's kind of helped me. I know that's helped some other people who are starting at square one, like I was as an older man. And I think I just hope that others are not afraid or worried about, you know, it's too late for me to teach an old dog new tricks or whatever the case might be, right? That's not. I think we all need to know where we are. We all need to get in touch with our own journey and just start taking that first step. And hopefully this can be that step from wherever you are in your journey. We all have room to grow. So thank you for your attention.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you, brother. Question for you. This is something that we talked about at one of our administrative meetings, but so as you stand in your purpose and you are actively fighting against racism and racist practices within our district, because I see you do that, can you name a white person in this district who has lost their job as an administrator for standing up for racism or standing up against racism?
I cannot.
Thank you. So I can name 50 people who have lost their job or been pushed out of districts that I've been in for standing up against racism. Just think about that. 5-0. And this is why this work together, and John and I are just one example of it. You may have many examples of what it looks like to truly be in this work in interracial relationships for social justice, to ensure our kids get exactly what they need, and I would say deserve. Because it takes all of us in this work. To think that you or one other person can do it alone is, it may feel good for you, but to really sustain this work and move things forward, it's got to take a united front. And it's got to be a time where, you know, we are listening to one another and listening to the different frames of different places on that consciousness wheel that we're coming from, to be able to, you know, move each other and move this work forward. I'm also a firm believer in non-negotiables as well. You know, I think that in this room, there has to be specific non-negotiables that you have as a leader. We are all leaders in every single position we have. We all have a sphere of influence that we make an impact on a daily basis. And so think about what those non-negotiables are for you. Because in this quest for anti-racism and for social justice, it's truly a quest for humanity and our collective humanity that we're fighting for, y'all. That's really what it is. And so as I move it through this journey, there's different pieces of my humanity that I get back that's been lost. I'm not sure what that feels like for you, John.
I think that speaks to how early we are in our journey in 207. As you were talking about, do I know anyone? And I don't. I mean, we just came up with our equity statement last year, right? So, so we're starting, and yeah, we'll get the ball rolling, but we're not quite there.
No doubt, no doubt. I definitely don't want to make sure no one takes your eye. It's not about losing your job. It's about, John has a white racial currency that he's able to do things that I just can't. And so for us utilizing each other's strengths and how we navigate a system to break down barriers and obstruction to ensure that all of our students have access and opportunity, as well as our staff members, is key. Thanks, y'all.
I got you back,
my man, absolutely. Why don't we, do you want to move into open chat or you want to go into breakout rooms?
Let's do windows and mirrors real quick.
Okay.
Is that okay? In breakouts?
Yeah, so Greg, if you can take us to windows and mirrors at slide 16. So the concept of windows and mirrors is truly, like in John's story, Want to Know, we're going to have you in breakout rooms based on what you heard from him. What were some windows and mirrors, right? So this is a concept from Seed. If it's a window, you're looking into John's experience, and it's something different than your own that you're appreciating in what he was sharing. And a mirror is what John was sharing is exactly a reflection of yourself. Like exactly what he was sharing is exactly what I go through, what I've been through. So I see windows or mirrors from John's narrative. And so we're going to give you an opportunity to dialogue. And so when we go into these breakout rooms, we ask that you have your cameras on because it is the worst thing to go in a breakout room and there's 5 people and everyone have their cameras off and no one's talking. So we really want people to dig in. So Greg is going to put us in breakout rooms. We'll see you in 4 minutes, y'all. Talk about windows and mirrors. Thank you. So those of you who are moving into breakout rooms, just make sure you accept that notification that you're getting. And Greg is working on inviting you to a fabulous room. VIP status.
Yeah.
They should all be open.
All right, Greg, can you maybe re-invite Andrea Lara, Matt Burke, Douglas Williams, Shamoun Ebrahimi, Amanda, just a couple more.
Yep.
Is this that discomfort piece you were talking about?
No, not the same thing. Not the same thing.
I feel like the last kid getting picked for the softball team.
Oh no.
Nobody wants us on
So
this.
if we can adjust, I would love for us to share out. Whoever would like to jump in first. Like let's start with some windows. Windows or mirrors. So what are some windows into John's narrative and what are some mirrors? Go ahead and jump in, anybody.
Joaquin, if you don't mind, I'd love to go first because I'm trying to juggle this fool right here, trying to go to bed.
Go ahead, Shamoun.
So I've been trying to be slick about this whole thing. I got kid duty. But anyway, I had the honor of really sharing a lot of this journey with Joaquin, actually, and John, ironically. And I think what really stuck out to me was that, despite the fact that maybe I thought that I had a good handle on a lot of things. Truly, I felt the same as John in a lot of ways, that like I've learned a lot more than I thought I ever would. And I've realized really I have a lot more work to do. And this is especially important to me because as I'm raising 3 children, I'm thinking to myself, like, not only in the professional realm, but as a parent, like, what am I doing every single day with my kids to just like completely change the way I was brought up? I was forced to think in certain ways that really was never good for anybody, especially people of color, especially people of like the Muslim religion, because I was really taught to hate for a long time. And this is the kind of stuff that like that resonated with me as John was speaking, because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I also am learning, and I'm also going on the same journey. Just like him, it looks a little different for me in some ways.
Shimon, thank you so much. And thank you for going first. Someone else, feel free to jump in to share what windows or mirrors stood out for you.
Mirror was easy for me because I was raised in suburban white neighborhood, so kind of like the same. I saw people just like me until I went away to college. So that was my mirror. Raised in Park Ridge, Maine South. So I'm the other, and I'm sure Maine South is pretty much the same as it was. When was I in high school? 5 years ago. So whatever. But I'm pretty sure it's about the same. And that was, I saw myself in that, John.
Thank you, Brian.
Andrea, whenever you're ready, I know you felt like you were being picked last, so I just want to extend the invite. Don't feel any pressure.
I just was thinking it was kind of funny. Because I kept looking for my breakout room invitation. I was getting really excited and nothing was happening. Well, first of all, hello, everybody. I loved hearing the word seed, because that's where, that's a long time ago. And that's when I first was introduced to this kind of work at Libertyville High School. And my friend Jennifer Ulix, who appears to be in the Bahamas right now, she and I were sort of partners in crime, kind of doing seed training and all that. So that felt really good to hear that term. And I'm glad others of you were there. For me, like Joaquin and maybe others, I identify as a brown person, Bolivian, not Mexican, Bolivian, but my last name is Mexican. So I live near Mundelein, and so a lot of people just assume that I'm one person and I can speak a language that I barely am conversational in. So I suppose what I really related to with John, your story was, kind of really taking up that charge for Save the Chief, not realizing. I like it. It was funny for me. I thought it was great. And I've been there before too, as somebody who probably should have been a little bit more woke. Not real jokes I've told in the past, I would be mortified if those were somehow, made public, or things that I thought were just fine. I would be devastated if I now, knew people knew about. So I really related to that. And I thought that was really brave, to talk about, that was your cause at the time. So that's what I really related to.
Thanks, Andrea. Or Andrea. Andrea?
Well, that's prettier, but I go by Andrea.
Okay.
Yeah, I like Andrea, but yeah.
Thanks, Andrea. I think we have time for one more before Greg moves us back into the main room.
Something that sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
So I'm Matt Burke over at Glenbrook North. I saw John and I have fairly similar experiences, I think, and overall, I went to, when I went to college, I grew up in the suburbs. I grew up in Elmhurst, so I went to York High School, so fairly similar. And I went to the University of Missouri, and I actually went to Mizzou in the fall of 2015, which is when we had most of our discussions regarding race, is kind of when they hit a variety of different tensions. And so for me, being this white kid from the suburbs, being thrown into that, it was like the best racial education I've ever been given, but it also was a lot of, you know, discomfort and kind of working through that and going, I'm trying to figure out like, oh, I don't know everything. And really, I think, you know, so I felt very similar to that in what John shared.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. Welcome back, everybody. As you're entering the space, hope you had a good short discussion. Again, there is not enough time, but this is how we expect and accept non-closure, and understand that this is the beginning of the conversation or a continuation of a conversation you were having earlier today or last week, that this conversation does not end. And it definitely does not live professionally. It must move into your personal realm if that does not exist. I can't tell you how many people I've had in diversity workshops and racial consciousness workshops, specifically a partner who's married to a person of color who identifies as white, and them having to do a specific activity that we asked them to do, and them saying, I've been married for my partner for 20 plus years and we've never had a true conversation about race. That breaks my heart, and that is real though. Of what John was talking about, discomfort, is there's all different types of internal and social pressures that may keep us away from having the conversation. But that all upholds a system of white supremacy, and not white supremacy in hoods or tiki torches or skinheads. This is the white supremacy that lives and breathes in our systems. It maybe lives and breathes in us. And so it's important to name what that is and really interrogate how that's being formulated around our personal and professional lives. All right, so let's go into the compass, y'all. So Greg is gonna take us back into our slide deck, and just a check-in the compass. So where are you at? Are you in feeling, thinking, believing, or acting? If you can put in the chat right now where you are. So are you in believing, thinking, feeling, or acting? Or you may be somewhere in between. Thank you, Terry. Feeling. Thank you. Yes, a lot of feeling, a lot of thinking, believing I saw. Thank you. Thinking and acting. Thank you, Karen. Kevin, thank you. Deborah, thank you. Thank you, Natalie. Thanks, Mike. All over. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate that. That's why this compass is so important, to really check in and really get in touch of our humanity again, and also understand where the other person is at. And so right now we're checking in with ourselves. So we appreciate that. We're going to go to the next slide. This is going to, actually, if we can go to 23, because we won't have time to do this quick activity because we want to move along in the conversation. So slide 23, what we're going to do is we're going to list some definitions that are necessary in having a racial discourse, a racial dialogue. So then what it'll look like with me and John as a white person and a person of color, or you can go ahead and populate all of them, Greg, or what it looks like between John and another white person, right? So in that respect, you know, what intra-racial discourse looks like and interracial discourse looks like, it's important to function with the common definitions, right? So race is skin color and physical features and the socialized meanings attached to them. Racial is pervasive social significance of skin color. Racism, the practice of enacting and enforcing a hierarchy based on the belief that one race is superior to others. The intersection of racial prejudice plus institutional power equals racism. And racist, individual and or policy then enacts racism, right? So just think about how conversations about race may happen in your building or in your family, and think about which was the activity, but we didn't have time for it. If we would put these words up, race, racial, racism, and racist, I can promise you we would all have different definitions, right? So it's important for us to function on a common framework of how we're engaging in intra-racial discourse and interracial discourse. We're going to jump to 24, the next slide. This is something that we're just going to show. This is called The Art of Mindful Inquiry. This is by Lee Mun-Hwa. And so in a conversation about race, it's important for you to really sit in that conversation and listening to that person, so that your next question is, what I heard you say was, and you're repeating what the person is saying. Not verbatim, but giving an indication that you were there with them in the conversation about race. Tell me more about what you said by. What angered you about what happened? What hurt you about what happened? This is personally my favorite. I think it's most powerful. What's familiar about what happened? How did it affect you? How does it affect you now? And notice how last it gets to what do you need, what do you want? Right? Specifically in my experience in the dean's office, it would even start at the top. It would skip and go right down to what do you need, what do you want? Right? Without seeing the humanity in the person across from you that is a student expressing or a colleague expressing or a family member expressing their racial interaction or racist interaction, right? So really sitting with them and moving through the art of mindful inquiry allows you to sit with empathy and for you, each other, for you both to be able to see and recognize each other's humanity in that conversation. Why don't we go to the 26, which is the 3 C's, Greg? The 3 C's are, we'll have this available for y'all to reference as well. And sorry about us speeding through some of this. So the 3 C's are important because some people get lost of like the difference between corner, culture, and color. So there is a difference between your nationality, your ethnicity, and your race. It's really important to function off race, racial, racism, racist, like those 4 words, understanding the vocabulary of what those mean so we have a common agreement. And also these right here, the 3 C's. Like what is your nationality, what is your ethnicity, and what is your race? 3 very different things. So my nationality is I'm a U.S. citizen. It says a U.S. citizen on my passport. My ethnicity is a Mexican American because that's very different, right? In Spanish, it's ni de aquí ni de allá. Like I'm not from here and I'm not from there. So in America, like I'm not really American. I've been told that, even though I was born here, right? And then when I'm in Mexico, I'm not really Mexican, right? So the hyphenation is powerful. Mexican American is truly my cultural ethnicity, and my race is brown. John, you want to model yours?
Yeah, I apologize. I got kicked out and jumped back in. Hopefully I'm available.
You're all good.
So yeah, my nationality, I'm a U.S. citizen. My ethnicity would be Southside Irish, and I identify as white.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that. So in the next slide, in 27, we have about 4 minutes left, so it is unfair for us to do this activity. And this is something that we're going to save for next time we're together. And so that is to offer some breakout room space and for us to discuss what was your first personal experience with dealing with race or racism? Because we have all dealt with it. Oftentimes in spaces, there may be certain people that feel like, well, I've never dealt with race. We've all dealt with it. The difference is of how conscious and aware we are of that dealing is important. And also the most recent, describe your most recent personal experience with dealing with race or racism. Describe what happened. For some of you, this most recent event may have been an hour ago. And then the greater and the more your consciousness evolves and raises, that earliest memory of race and dealing with race and racism will get earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier, right? It may start like in college, and then it may get like, oh, well, now I remember like in high school. I remember when I was 5, right? And so as that develops, it's really important that you keep in mind of like how early can you remember, and then what is your most recent, and that will tell you a gauge of how your racial consciousness is really growing. As you move into 28, let's jump to 29. And so what we're leaving you with before we open it up for about 3 minutes is some really good resources. If you haven't read Peggy McIntosh's Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, that is a must read. Teaching While White is I would call it an oldie but goodie. Their last one was in 2017. But in my perspective, it is, you just listen to it. My recent favorite is Nice White Parents by the New York Times. That was an excellent research study. John, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think the Teaching While White podcast was incredibly eye-opening. If you haven't, it's been out for several years, but if you haven't heard that, that's a great place to start. And I can only talk about the first 3 episodes of Nice White Parents. I haven't gotten through all 5 yet.
Ooh, wait till you get to episode 5, John.
Oh my God, it's incredible.
Whew. Yes, I see, Colleen, you've listened to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a must listen to.
I think as we start talking about, you know, the podcasts and the reading, it's important to point out that, you know, racism is a white person problem, right? It's my problem. It's your problem. We're not going to look to our colleagues of color and say, hey, why don't you solve this? Because this is on us. And it starts with education as well, and really diving in. It starts with the personal, as Joaquin had mentioned earlier. Unpacking the invisible knapsack, again, timeless and a great place to start. And this education piece is really going to help everyone, you know, take those steps that we need to take. And then what we're asking people to bring back next time is a little bit of research for next month on your student activity data based on participation, ceremonies, celebrations, all of those things, and leadership positions as well, and try and disaggregate the information by race and locate disparities, right? And if you don't have the specific data and charts and graphs, don't worry about it. Anecdotal data is fine. We don't want to give you too much homework, right? But I think coming back in a month with a feel for what your student activities look like in your building can help the next step in this conversation.
Thanks, John. Absolutely. And as we have slide 34 up, just to say thank you. We are noticing it's 9 o'clock. I know I'm willing to stay after a little bit. John, thumbs up, he is also. So those of you who need to jump off, we really appreciate you spending an hour on a Tuesday evening from 8 to 9. Thank you so much. And please fill out the survey that Sally just put into the chat. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna have part 2 in October. And then we have 4 more sessions targeting really sticking to the concept of equity in student activities moving for the next 6 months. So at this point, for those of you who need to jump off, please do so. For those of you who want to stay, and if you have a few questions, we want to open up for a few minutes. So go ahead and unmute and ask anything you have. I see Doug Williams in the house. Hey, Doug. So good to see you, friend.
Guys,
What's
thank
up,
you
brother?
all.
Good to see you, man.
Hey, I did see Nancy Heinz asked, do we use this kind of training with students? Not yet. We just started a SOAR program in the district that started like late February and actually built up pretty well over the summer virtually. And our plan is to utilize our students in there to get some training and bring that to eventually to our white students. Good question.
Anyone else? Feel free to jump in. Thanks, Kevin.
Actually, if I may, I just, first of all, good to see you, Joaquin. Always good to see you. You're always smiling. I just wanted to say that as a Black, I appreciate your story, Mr. Adelworth. But I will say I took, I don't know, I was a little unsettled by the request, I guess, of patience and meeting people where they are. As a African-American man, descendant of slaves, I, as a Black person, am always being asked to be patient, always put in a position where I have to contort myself into various yoga poses and pretzel shapes to keep white people comfortable. So when you make the ask of being patient, and I've been told to be, I mean, I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I was told to be patient when I was 6 years old. I was told to be patient when I was deployed in Somalia. I was told to be patient when I started working in this field. So I guess, my question is, how long am I, as an African-American man, descendant of slaves, and being a father of a daughter who wears hijab, because there was someone who shared in the space how they grew up being Islamophobic, anti-Muslim. How long am I supposed to meet people where they are? I mean, how long am I supposed to wait? And this is not just a question to you, Mr. Allworth, it's to everyone in this room.
Mm-hmm. And just hold on to that. Doug, thank you so much for asking that question. I appreciate you. I see you. And just hold on to that question. This is a question to all of us, right? And John, if please feel free to speak to that. I would say, well, I'll just hold my voice for a second. Go ahead, John.
I just want to say thank you, Doug, for sharing that. And I apologize for the patience. I think I don't understand that piece, and that's why I'm here, right? That's why I'm trying to learn, and I do apologize. I apologize for that, for my impact. All I can do, I believe. I'm sorry, and we'll do better. I don't want to be patient anymore either. So hopefully we can work together on that.
Yeah, what resonates, thank you, John. What resonates with me for Doug, the question is, it kind of goes back to the question I asked John. I think all of us we can talk about the district we worked in, Doug, together, of how many white people we know who have been fired for standing up for racism, like really standing up for racism. I don't know one, right? This is just, I'm sure someone exists, because we were just having this conversation earlier, is that I think what's missing from our white kids is the narratives of white people truly giving their lives for the quest for racial justice in this country, because there have been many. But in terms of professional pieces, how the patients, I think in my opinion, there's like this unsolved fear for some our white teachers and administrators of like, I don't want to push this work too hard. I'm going to make people uncomfortable. We have people literally being killed on the streets, right? And being choked out for 8 minutes and 46 seconds and losing their lives in that way. And yet some people are afraid to have a conversation. But that's where we are in this binary of, conscious and ready to move into action, to really move the work in the sphere of influence and not have patience, and really use what is real to us and what we have recognized our entire lives as people of color, specifically you and I, Doug, and speaking for our relationship, is there's so much that our white counterparts, our colleagues can do, and John models that in our district, to really push the envelope and really use that white racial currency as an advantage. Because none of you are on this call that are white asked to be white. You know what I mean? Like, this is a social construction that has been forced upon all of us. For people like Doug and I and others I know on the line are people of color that have forced to navigate whiteness our entire lives. And for those of you who are white, as you grow into your consciousness, you can move fast in this work. And it's important to be able to do this work side by side with people of color. But I would say for me, when I know someone is ready to move with me truly in this work and really stand in their purpose for equity, specifically racial equity, is for someone who's willing to walk through the fire with me, right? And I would ask you, Doug, have you met one white person professionally as you move this work forward that has really walked through the fire with you?
Yes.
Right? They're out there.
Yes.
They're out there.
I mean,
for sure.
yeah, there's a couple I can think of.
Yep. And I'm going to give you one example, y'all. So those of you still in line, I really appreciate it. But what stands out to me is Bree Newsome. For those of you who don't know who Bree Newsome is, she's a woman who black woman who took down the Confederate flag in Charlottesville after Dylann Roof killed 9 black people, 9 African-American individuals who were worshiping at Mother Emanuel AME. And James Tyson, so as she was taking it down, this is the difference between allyship and co-conspirator. There's a difference. So as an ally, as a white man, James Tyson is on the outside, right, with his construction uniform saying, you know, all right, Bree, I'm going to watch out for you. I'll watch out, right? So that's like an ally. I'm going to watch out. I'll let you know when someone's coming, right? And so she was going up, scaling, and the cops were coming, right? So this is ally. Hey, Bree, they're coming, right? And just leave, right? So this is what co-conspirator means. Co-conspirator means, what are you willing to lose? What are you willing to give up in this fight? And so what James Tyson did is he put himself inside the barrier, right? Inside that metal barrier that was hiding the, or protecting the pole. And as the police ascended to the pole, they were gonna tase the pole to electrocute Bree. Imagine that, right? And what did James Tyson do? And understanding his white racial currency, he puts his hand on the pole. Because he's willing to lose something. And what did the cops do? They did not use their tasers on the pole, right? And I think that for me, that's a great illustration of someone who names themselves as an ally or someone who's a co-conspirator, like someone who's really walking through the fire and is giving something up in this fight for social justice. So thank you everyone so much. Doug, always thank you for posing that question to us. We really appreciate you and allowing us to lean in. Thank you, John, as a partner. I appreciate you. Brian, it's all yours.
Joaquin and John, thank you so much. We so appreciate our first night of race and equity and the lens of student activities. And we will be hosting TNTs throughout the rest of September and October and beyond. But you can look forward to these conversations on the third Tuesday of every month. So please join us. And thank you. Sorry for the technical difficulties here and there, but you all stayed in and we appreciate it. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And please make sure you fill out the survey so we can get better, hopefully week by week. Thanks, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Have a good night.